welcome back and thanks for joining AWS Educate on Twitch. I'm Grace.
And I'm Leo.
And we're really excited to be here for the fourth in our four-part series on the basics of cloud computing, how to log into the AWS console, and how to use some of the same AWS services that so many businesses are using today to build and run just these powerful and amazing apps in the cloud today. My name is Grace Kitzmiller. I'm the Senior Product Lead for AWS Educate, and I look after our student, educator, and recruiter experiences. AWS Educate is Amazon's initiative to try and get resources into the hands of teachers and students so that they can really start to learn how to use the cloud. And I'm here with Leo.
And I'm Leo Zhadnovsky. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect here at AWS. And I basically help our customers implement various AWS services. So things such as we're going to discuss today, like Poly and Translate, and also things that we've discussed previously, like EC2, ELB, and other services we haven't discussed as well.
Great. Now, before we dive into all the really great details around using AWS and using some of these new services, I want to remind everyone that you can, as a Twitch student, you can go ahead and join AWS Educate and receive access to different resources. The way that you join is to go to awseducate.com, choose the option to join AWS Educate, and in the promo code box on the student application, you want to enter Twitch 2018. That's TWITCH 2018, all in lowercase. When you do that, you'll gain access to some additional benefits for Twitch students. And those include things like an AWS promotional credit that you can use to cover some of the charges that might be associated with your learning. Or you can choose a starter account, which provides access to the AWS console in a preloaded account that already has some credits associated with it. As a student, you also receive access to about a dozen different cloud career learning pathways and access to a job board. Let's see. And also, just want to say, please post questions as we go. I was on the other side of the camera for the first two episodes. It was really great to hear what kind of questions you might have, where we might be overlooking some information that would be really useful as you start your journey learning and using the cloud. Leo, can you recap the first couple sessions?
Sure. So the first couple of sessions, we were kind of building up to what we're doing today, which is setting up a WordPress plugin for Amazon Poly. And so the first session, we built a static website with S3, which is our simple storage service. And so that basically involved uploading just the files for that website, which was a little snakes game, to an S3 bucket, enabling the S3 bucket for static hosting, and going to the endpoint for that.
So you don't actually need a web server to host that static website?
Yeah, I mean, there are servers are part of the S3 service, but they're all managed. So all you have to do as a user is just upload the content to the bucket, enable the bucket for static hosting, and that's it. So it's really simple. Yep.
Great.
And you have to worry about scaling it or anything like that. And we also talked about how customers such as Under Armour use S3 to store and analyze their data for their fitness app. And also how Airbnb uses S3 to store and display their images of all the places that you would rent through Airbnb.
Great.
So in the second session, we talked about Lambda and serverless computing in general. So we basically deployed an app through the serverless application repository, which is a repository of Lambda applications that you could install that are already pre-built for you. And that app was written in Python. It used AWS Lambda, it used AWS API Gateway as well, and DynamoDB. And so the end result was you had a to-do list that you could edit, but it didn't require, again, any servers or any relational databases. Like, it was all deployed really quickly. You don't have to worry really about the scaling part of it. And also, you're only really paying for what you use there, right? So every time you go to the website that executes the Lambda function, that's charged in 100 millisecond increments. DynamoDB, you're just paying for storage, and API Gateway, you're paying per number of requests, essentially. So if nobody's using your website, you're not paying much, right? Versus if you have instances, you're paying for when they're on, not when they're used.
Now, doesn't Netflix use Lambda?
Yes. So Netflix uses Lambda for a bunch of things like, analyzing their backups and seeing if they're actually they can be restored. So yeah, we have a lot of customers that use Lambda for all kinds of different reasons, including Netflix.
Great. And now in the third session, you took it up a notch, right?
Yeah. So now we've tried, by the third session, we had a static website and we had a serverless website or application. And then in the last episode, we set up a 3-tier web architecture using LAMP, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP.
Okay.
And so that involved WordPress, which is an open source content management system that a lot of folks use. And we wanted to be scalable as well. So we had it so that there's a load balancer, which uses Amazon ELB, which is Elastic Load Balancing. And we stored the source code for it in code commit, which is our managed Git service, essentially.
Okay.
And then we deployed it with Elastic Beanstalk, right? So Elastic Beanstalk is a deployment service that handles auto-scaling and monitoring and all this stuff for me in deployment, so I don't have to manually set it up, right? And then we also used RDS, which is our relational database service, and then we used Code Pipeline that orchestrates the deployment. So whenever I make a change to my code or install a new plugin like we're going to do today, it'll automatically build a package out of that. It'll deploy the package onto my web servers, however many of them I have in my auto-scaling group.
Great. So you can get your updates out across your entire fleet of instances. Through an automated process.
So the setup we have so far is basically a WordPress site. It's the stock WordPress site, but it's set up in a similar way to how our customers would set up in production. So it can scale. There's a load balancer. There's a relational database, which is it can also scale in different ways, which we talked about last week. So that leads us to today's session, right? And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to use Poly. And Poly is our text-to-speech service, so you can give it a blob of text, and it'll translate that into lifelike speech. And it uses deep learning technologies in order to do that. And there's a bunch of different voices that you can do, so different languages. I believe over 28 languages right now, and over 40 voices. Okay. So you can pick different voices, and it sounds all natural. And then there's another service called Lex. So we're not going to be using that today, but Lex is basically the other way around. It's speech to text.
Okay, great.
Right, not text to speech.
So by using Poly on your WordPress site, you'll be able to, your visitors will be able to actually listen to your posts rather than having to read them. So if they're on the bus, in the car, they don't have to miss out on your content. Yeah,
or if they're visually impaired, they can just hit play and listen to the content as well.
Okay.
And also this plugin that we've released, and I'll show you the URL for it so you can install it yourself. It also does translation too. So you can translate both the text on your blog post in WordPress and the actual audio that it's using to a bunch of different languages. So now you can have the audio of your blog post in a bunch of different languages and the text as well.
So if you have visitors to your site from around the world, you're not leaving anyone out. You can enable a number of different languages, and just with a click of a button or a browser setting, the page itself using Translate will update to the different language.
Yeah, and I'll show you how that works. Yeah.
Okay.
There's basically different buttons that it sets out for different languages.
Great. I mean, so we've really come a long way. So from the first episode where we were showing folks how to log in for the first time, all the way up through a scalable, elastic, load balanced site. And today we're just going to kick off having a little bit of fun with text to speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
All right, so should we dive into the demo here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Okay, so let's show my screen. This is my AWS account. This is the one that we set up, I believe, in our first Twitch stream here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually open up, this is Code Pipeline. So if you recall last week, we have Code Pipeline. And so Code Pipeline is using, is basically connecting my Git repository, which is here. So this is the contents of my actual WordPress site, right? And anytime I make a change to this, it is going to basically zip it up into a zip file, put it into an S3 bucket, and throw it over to Elastic Beanstalk. And Elastic Beanstalk, this actually handles the WordPress installation. So this handles the whole platform for me. So it's running PHP 7.2, and it's handling, again, this is the deployment. So last time we did this was October 2nd, which was the last episode, right?
Right, and you can see the status of your deploys through this console as well.
Yep, and we'll see as I'm going on it what it's doing. So this is the actual website here. So let me go here.
While you're going there, actually, we did have a question from earlier on from Alcran14, and it was, What are your rules of thumb to determine EC2 versus Lambda? Is
Sure.
there any intuition or anything
Yeah.
to look for behind making that decision?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So if you have an existing application that's already like running on a physical server or somewhere else on a virtual server somewhere, and so it's designed for servers, right?
Right.
That might be a challenge to move to serverless, right? Because it's already written with a certain architecture in mind. So that one you might want to just take the code and lift and shift it to EC2.
To EC2,
right?
okay.
If you're building something new, or if you're picking an existing application that might be written for serverless computing, that's when you would consider Lambda. Or such as in cases like this, like you might have WordPress, right? And WordPress is a PHP application, so it's running in an EC2 instance, but there may be a plugin that utilizes Lambda.
Okay.
So for example, one thing that's popular now is it's called headless WordPress. So headless WordPress means I would like to have the features of WordPress because it's got a really nice editor and content management, but I don't want, like, when you actually go to my website, there's no reason to expose that. I just want like the
okay.
actual site that it produces to be static, right?
Okay.
So I've seen it where people use Lambda to, when they hit publish in WordPress, it generates a static copy of their website and uploads it to S3. But you're managing your website through like the dynamic editor, but you can lock that editor down inside your VPN or inside a certain set of IP addresses, so it's more secure that way.
Okay.
So yeah, you can. It's not a either or proposition, is what I would say. But yeah, so this is my WordPress that I set up last week. So again, this is just stock WordPress. My Hello World post. So what I'm going to do first is let's go to so we've got Elastic Beanstalk here again. I'm going to actually go to my Cloud9 environment. So let me actually find which tab it is. Here we go. So this is Cloud9.
Is this the same environment you set up with the last episode?
Yep. I just after the last episode, it suspended because it was idle for 30 minutes, so I wasn't paying for idle usage. And then right before we started taping, I turned it back on. In a few minutes, it was back.
Okay,
so what I'm going to do here is this is again a checkout of my Git repository. So I'm just going to do a Git pull, which makes sure that there haven't been any changes since I last logged in. There haven't, so it says it's up to date. And so now what we're going to do here is we need to download the plugin. So I'm going to go here, and we're going to paste this URL here, but this is where you would get the plugin. It's on our GitHub page under AWS Labs. It's open source, so anybody can use it. So I'm just going to copy this URL, and that's going to help me clone it.
So to enable this, all you really need, the first step is to download the plugin.
Yeah, so just go to our GitHub page, download the plugin, and I'm going to just go up a directory here. And I'm going to clone this repository.
Okay.
So here we go. So it has been cloned. So as you can see, there's a Amazon Poly WordPress folder. So I'm going to just move that folder actually into my plugins folder in WordPress. So Educate WordPress. Here we go.
So WordPress can find it along with all the other plugins you might have.
Yep, exactly. So there's a plugins folder here. So I'm just literally moving it into the plugins folder. So I did that, and now I'm going to have to commit the change. So I'm going to go to my WordPress folder, and I'm going to do git add WP content /plugin /Amazon Poly plugin. Oh, let me fix that really quick. Just to mind, because it's another git checkout, I have to actually remove the Git configuration directory from here. So I'm going to go do that. Okay. Yep. All right. So that worked. So here we go. So now it's saying that I have a new file. I think, let me just actually make sure that this worked here. So I'm going to add all these just in case.
Okay. Just to be sure nothing's missing from the folder. Okay.
So I actually don't think that worked. So let me actually download a zip file instead, because I think that'll be better. So here we go. Here's the zip file. So I guess we're doing it live. So so I'm going to actually remove the folder that I did here. Okay, so I'm going to re-download. So now I'm downloading the zip file. So here we go.
This is good. You're showing both options.
Yep.
So that's good.
Yep. So I'm going to unzip it.
Okay.
All right, great. So now I've unzipped it, and yeah, so this doesn't have any Git folders in it. So now I can add it.
Okay.
There we go. So now it's showing that, okay. So I'm gonna do git commit, edit poly plugin. So I'm committing my code, and I'm gonna push it up to my Git repository. So assuming I haven't messed up, what this does is, so it should kick off a deploy here. Okay. So what we're gonna, so this will, in a few seconds, detect that I made a change. So let's go to my Git repository here just to check. So we're gonna go to repositories, Educate WordPress, and see it last modified just now. So it picked up the commit.
Okay, great.
So this was my commit here, added poly plugin, right? And it shows all the files I've added here. So it's a lot of changes. So let's go back here. So now it's in progress. So what it's doing now is it's taking a zip file of this plugin, or actually the whole Git repository, zipping it up, and it's going to send it to Elastic Beanstalk. So this is going to take a few minutes. So while that's going on, let's talk about some of our customers that use Poly.
Sure. I think, well, first, does Alexa use Poly? I think.
Yes. Well, basically, when you use Alexa, there's like the default Alexa voice, right?
Right.
But what you can do is if you're authoring an Alexa skill, you can actually get it to use Poly. And Poly has a bunch of different voices. So if you don't want to use the default Alexa voice, you can actually change it for Poly, for any of the voices that Poly supports.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. And, also if you're writing like a chatbot or something that uses Lex, which is like the opposite direction. It's voice to text.
Voice to text, okay.
And so that's similar to what Alexa does internally as well.
Okay,
Yep.
great. And I think, one company that I'm really excited about that uses Poly is Duolingo, right?
Yep.
They have it's an education language learning platform. And I think they have about 300 million users that are learning many different kinds of languages.
Yep. So Duolingo, they actually have a blog post where they talk about how they use Poly. So they have different modules inside their app, and the module is basically just, the goal is to get you to learn a certain language, right?
Right.
And so they used to use a different text-to-speech provider or different providers, and they tried out Poly, and the blog post talks about how they do A/B testing. So they'll have the Poly voice, or one of the Poly voices, against like their old provider, and they determined that through their A/B testing, the Poly voices did a lot better. So a lot of their users liked it a lot better. So an A/B test is when you have like 50%.
What's an A/B test?
Yeah, so an A/B test is you have the same web page, you have the
Okay.
same block of text you've translated, and let's say half the users you give them the Poly version, half them you
Okay.
give them the other version. Then
Okay.
you see like click-through rates and engagement and different statistics, or you can do a survey. There's a lot of ways to test it to see which one performs better.
Okay.
Yep. And so they also talk about like why you would use something like text-to-speech versus just recording humans,
Yeah,
right?
why wouldn't you just get a bunch of people
Right.
to, go ahead and read through all of
Yeah.
their scripts?
So first of all, it's really expensive, right? Because you have to hire voice actors, but on
One
top of
for each language, or
Yeah.
at least one for each
Yeah,
language, and each
yeah.
voice for each
Yep.
language. Right?
And you have to do a lot of takes. Like, I just did a different video shoot the other week, and that one wasn't live. So we did a bunch of takes, and it's hard, right? You have to pronounce everything properly.
Okay.
So it takes a long time. So it doesn't really scale. If you're generating a lot of content like Duolingo does, it's going to take, you're going to basically have to employ a bunch of voice actors all the time to do the same thing, right? And they built a microservice with Elastic Beanstalk that uses Poly. So basically it'll take a block of text, so whatever they send it'll convert it to voice. And the other cool thing about Poly is it supports SSML, which is a markup language for speech.
Right.
And so basically, that allows you to specify how words are pronounced, so you can have proper
Okay.
pronunciation for things
For
that might
different
not be
words.
obvious.
And I think you can also use that to add sort of pauses
Yep.
or sort of natural things that, as a person, you naturally insert pauses or breaths in
Yep.
your speech as well.
Yeah, to make it sound more
Does
natural.
that make it sound more natural? Great.
Exactly. So they go through about how it's more scalable and it's more cost efficient. There's a bunch of reasons for them to do it, and we'll throw the link up, to make sure that you can read the blog post as well.
Okay, great. We do have another question. I think you covered it a little bit, but it's by IRTHME. And it's just really, so what is the difference between Lex and Poly?
Yeah, so you can think of it as opposite direction. So Poly is text to speech.
Okay.
Lex is speech to text. So it takes something that you say to say, a chat bot. It doesn't actually have to be a voice. It could be, text for programmatic parsing. So if it's a chat bot, like you're typing, let's say you're a college student, hey, the laundry machine in my dorm room is broken. So it'll parse that sentence out into what you actually want. So it'll say, oh, okay, would you like to report this to facility? So it allows you to write apps that are conversational without having to, do all of the low-level parsing of conversations that you would normally have to do for that.
Is there some machine learning underlying?
Yeah,
those services?
both of them use machine learning and deep learning, to work.
Okay, great. Another question from Alcoran 14 is, again, how do you get different tones, emotions with Poly?
Yeah.
Is it possible to, emphasize a certain sentence or a certain word in a sentence?
Yeah, so that's actually that's what you use SSML for.
Okay.
Right? That's what that's for. Yeah. So my deployment looks like it's done. So let's see what it's actually doing here. So I'm going to refresh here. So this is my app. So yeah, as we can see, this was a few minutes ago. It deployed the new application version to my instances. The health is okay. So let's see what happened. I'm going to just refresh. This is my admin panel for the WordPress.
Okay.
So it looks like it's up, so that's a good sign. Let's go to plugins. Oh, so there's a new plugin available. I'm going to keep the old one. I'm not going to bother with this. But I'm going to activate the plugin. So it activated, but it can't connect to AWS, right? And so that is because it doesn't have credentials. So just because it's running an EC2 instance doesn't mean that it necessarily can connect to, the Poly service, the translate service, whatever it needs to probably create an S3 bucket. So luckily, I can go to the GitHub repository and look at what I need to do. So there's two options here. I can either give it an AWS access key and secret key. And if you're running this on like a laptop or on a server somewhere outside the database, that's probably what you would have to do. But I don't want to have to store like credentials in my actual code. So if it gets compromised, somebody can get access to my AWS account. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to actually go through an IAM role. So we've covered this in a previous week, but basically my instances
What is IAM?
So IAM is Identity and Access Management.
Okay.
And my EC2 instances that have my WordPress software on them, they have an IAM role. And so that role defines, you can attach IAM policies to it. So basically, you can say, okay, so this instance has access to create an S3 bucket.
Okay.
Or whatever you tell it to do.
And that would be the policy?
Yep, that would be the policy that you attach to the role.
Okay.
And so the nice thing about that is if something inside that instance is using one of our APIs like Bodo, Core, which is what this is using,
Okay.
it doesn't need to have any actual static credentials. So it'll connect to this thing called a metadata service that we have. And it sees, oh, okay, so this IAM policy gives me access to do these specific things, and it'll get temporary credentials, and it'll enable you to do things with AWS without having hard-coded credentials, essentially. And all this stuff happens in the background without you having to mess with it. So
So if you have an IAM role, rather than inserting your sort of full account credentials, it allows you to be really more fine-grained about what that particular service can do. And if or what that account or API user can
Right, so the level of granularity is the same because it uses the same IAM policy. What it lets you do is not have hard-coded credentials.
Okay.
So if you have a hard-coded credential, let's say that credential gets compromised, like you accidentally put it in a public Git repository, you then have to go in and disable that credential, and that's going to break everything, where like that'll break your app, right? So you have to go in and go into every server and swap the credentials, and so it's kind of a pain. If you have an IAM role, the credentials are managed for you and they're automatically rotated, so you don't have to worry about something leaking. And even if it does leak, it won't be good for more than a short period of time. And even then, you can actually disable an IAM role immediately. You can revoke that. So it's much easier to prevent credential leaks and mitigate security issues. So the directions for this actually give us the IAM policy that we need, and my instances already have a role. We just have to add this policy to the role. So I'm going to go to EC2 here. And actually, I'm not going to go to EC2. I'm going to go to Elastic Beanstalk, and I'm going to go to my configuration. I'm just going to see it's already configured with a virtual machine instance profile.
Okay.
So AWS Elastic Beanstalk EC2 role. And so I'm going to have to edit that role and add this permission to it. So I'm going to go to IAM, so Identity and Access Management, and so it's AWS Elastic Beanstalk EC2. So I'm going to do the search box here. Here we go. This is my role. And so these are the policies that it has right now. And so this basically, lets it do stuff, to interact with the Elastic Beanstalk service. I want to give it another policy. So I'm going to create a new policy, actually. And I'm not going to use the visual editor since I already have this. I'm going to do this. So basically, I could just copy and pasted the policy that I got from the docs. Let's hit review policy, and it's just verifying, okay, so I'm giving access to Poly, to S3 to be able to create some buckets and to translate.
Okay.
Oh, and I have to give the name to the policy. So let's do WordPress Poly policy. All right. So now that I've gone ahead and done that, so now I have the policy, so I'm going to do refresh here. And I'm going to do WordPress. And here's my policy that I just made. And I'm going to attach it to this role. So now I should have access to do what I need to do here. So let's go back to my WordPress. So I'm going to just hit refresh here. And it says new S3 bucket created. That was by my plugin. So it activated. So let's go. Now we have this menu here with a plugin, right? And so I'm going to go here. And so as you can see, this is blank. It doesn't need it. It already created an S3 bucket. So this is the S3 bucket is where it's storing the content. So once it converts, a post I have on my WordPress site to an MP3 file, that gets stored in S3. You also have the option of putting CloudFront in front of it. So CloudFront is our content delivery network. So let's say, we have users of our website in Japan, but this is hosted in our Ohio region. Normally there'd be some latency involved, right, with downloading something from Ohio and Japan, just the speed of light, right? So if you put a CloudFront distribution in front of it, which we're not going to do today, but if you can do that, it'll basically cache the file in a POP, which is a point of presence. In Japan, it'll be much faster. So I'm not changing any of these settings. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to enable text-to-speech. I'm going to hit save. Oh, let's see here. I think it may have not picked up my permissions yet. Okay, so I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm actually going to give this IAM role, just to be safe, I'm going to give it full Poly access. So let's see if that fixes it. So full access for Poly.
Okay.
Let's see if that works. So we'll go back here. Now let's see if this works. It did. So I must have been missing a policy. So here's where we configure text-to-speech. So we pick what voice we want. So there's a bunch of different voices for English, for example. So you can do Welsh English, Indian English, British English, Australian English, and different voices for each one. Yep. And so I'm going to do a Shakespeare sample for the voice. I'm gonna switch it to British English.
Okay.
I'm not changing any of this stuff. You can have it autoplay the audio.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to hit save. And then we can also enable translation support, which I want that. So let's enable translation support. Okay, so, and then you can pick what languages you want it to work in. So we'll do French, German, Italian, let's do Japanese. I speak Russian, so we'll do Russian. We can validate how accurate it is and say Spanish. We're going to hit save. Okay, so now we've enabled that, and there's also podcast support. So you can actually enable. Let's enable this. So you can actually set up a podcast. So basically, somebody on iTunes can subscribe to your WordPress site, and they can listen like a podcast to all your posts.
Oh, okay. Oh, great.
Okay, so now we've set this up. So now what we need to do is actually let's add some content. So we have a Hello World post, but I was going to do something more interesting. So let's copy. We'll copy some Shakespeare on here. So this is part of Mark Antony's speech from Julius Caesar.
Great.
And so I'm going to do a new post. And let's call it Friends, Romans, Countrymen, lend me your ears. And then I'm going to paste, and I'm going to actually get rid of the first sentence since we already put that in there. And so then at the bottom, see we have the Poly plugin here. So we can pick which voice we want.
So you could customize for each post. You really give your site some personality.
And we can also translate it. And if I hit this button, it'll tell me how much it costs to translate it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and hit translate. And so it's translating English to French, English to German, it's going through all the languages I enabled. And so let's.
And that's the Amazon Translate service?
Yep, that's using the Translate service, and it's also, I believe, using just the Poly as well, because Poly supports different languages, but then it both
Okay.
translated the text and the audio, so it's using different services for that. So I'm going to hit publish. So now that my post is published, let's take a look at the actual post. So here it is. So I'm going to just turn on my speakers. Hopefully you can hear this. Let's listen.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him.
So that worked. So now let's try a different language. So let's go to Russian, for example. So actually, I don't think the Russian has processed yet.
Oh, okay. I say the British made me feel like I was at a play.
Yeah. So actually, but just to show you how it works, I actually did this already on my other WordPress site.
Okay.
And so this one, I believe I enabled in Russian.
Друзья, римляне, соотечественники, одолжите мне уши ваши. Я
that works.
пришел похоронить Цезаря.
Yep. So that's pretty cool. So that's kind of that's how you set up the plugin. As you can see, it's not very involved. And the nice thing is, we actually we did this in kind of a very like a modern application development sort of way, using DevOps practices. So I didn't like manually SSH into a server. In fact, if you see,
Oh, that's
I
true.
did everything
Right.
through my web browser, which is
That's
pretty
great.
cool. I did
Yeah.
it through Cloud9. And all I really did was, I added these files, right? And that automatically triggered my pipeline. And the pipeline just, put whatever I added into my Elastic Beanstalk setup and made sure that the deploy was successful. And the actual deploy took like 3 minutes, which is really quick.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how to use this Poly plugin.
Actually, I have one question
Yeah.
for you. It looks like Big Red asked, can you join multiple MP3 files to create an audiobook using Poly?
Actually, I don't know that one off the top of my head, so we'll have to follow up offline
Right.
with that.
Well, I happen to actually have the
Oh,
answer
okay.
here as well, thanks to one of our posters back there. So the answer is yes, you can write a script to join the MP3 files together to make an audiobook.
Awesome, cool.
Yeah. So we all learned something else.
Yes,
every
yeah,
day.
I love learning new things.
Great. Just to kind of recap today's session, we started off with a quick review of our first 3 episodes, talked a little bit about how you join AWS Educate so that you can gain access to AWS promotional credits and other resources to support your efforts to try and, do some of the same exercises that Leo worked on today. And we added the Poly plugin to our WordPress site that we set up,
Yep.
I guess it was about 2 weeks ago.
Yep, and then we deployed it,
And we deployed it, and
and then we saw how to set it up, how to do all the IAM stuff, and how it works in production.
exactly. Let's see. So in closing, just want to remind everyone, again, you can join AWS Educate, use the promo code TWITCH2018, and your school email address to gain access to some of those additional resources. And really just, want to say thanks to everyone for joining these 4 episodes. We had a lot of fun. We hope you had fun too, and actually really, take the opportunity to go back and revisit the episodes.
Yep.
If you're joining here for the first time, start at the beginning, and you can work your way up to doing the same kind of translated text-to-speech version of a WordPress site. Also, as you progress through and as you do some different activities, feel free to reach out to us. Send a message to aws-twitch@amazon.com. Let us know how things are going. So real quickly before we close, what's next, Leo? Will you be at reInvent this year?
Yeah, I will be at reInvent. So reInvent this year is from November 26th to November 30th. And if you don't know what reInvent is, it's our yearly conference for AWS users. So at reInvent, we have hundreds of breakout sessions. So if you want to, anywhere from 100 to 400 level ones, so if you want to learn, either an intro talk or how to do something and dive deep into a service, you can do that. I'll be giving a talk on advanced continuous delivery best practices. So actually kind of how we did this deployment
Some of
stuff,
what we did
but just at a more in-depth level. You can also, if you are interested in getting AWS certified, and we have different certifications, you can get tested or do the certification test at reInvent. We have different boot camps and workshops on various topics. this year, I believe reInvent is it's at all different sites in Las Vegas as well. And then at the end of reInvent, there's the replay party, which is always fun. There's always a cool performer and arcade games and food and all of that. Actually, my first reInvent that I went to, which was the first reInvent, I was still a customer of AWS. I didn't work here yet. And it was a lot of fun. And I've been to everyone since. And I would highly recommend that anyone who can go, you should go. So, yeah.
Right.
Highly
And
recommend
so
it.
you and Ken will be back on Twitch
Yes.
streaming for AWS Educate at reInvent.
Yep.
Great. So everybody can watch the schedule on the stream.
Yep, exactly.
And we'll catch up with you next time. So thanks again so much for joining us on these 4 sessions.
Thank you.